take a look at these two right triangles. And in both of them, we want to find the value of x. So think about how we could go about doing that. In the triangle on the left, hopefully you said we could do Pythagorean theorem. We could set this up as x squared plus 6 squared equals 15 squared. The triangle on the right, however, there's not enough information to do Pythagorean theorem. We only know one of the three sides. So that is where trig, right triangle trig, comes in handy. So if you recall way back from algebra, our three trig ratios are sine, cosine, and tangent. And they are abbreviated sine, cos, and tan. And the sine ratio is opposite divided by the hypotenuse. The cos ratio is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And the tangent is the opposite divided by the adjacent. And some people remember this saying by some old hippies. So there's our S for sine, O for opposite, H for hypotenuse. Some old hippies catch a high. Tripping on acid. Now, to determine which trig ratio we're going to use, we have to go onto the triangle, and from the angle that we're given, this 6-degree angle right here, we're going to determine what the two sides are. The 15, because it's across from the 90-degree angle, is obviously the hypotenuse. And then the x, the other side we're looking for, it is next to the 6-degree angle. So this is the adjacent side. So since we know something about the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side, in this triangle, we would use cosine. So we would set this up as cos of 6 degrees, the angle always goes next to the word, so 6 degrees is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And once we have our equation written, we're going to go to our calculator and evaluate cos of 6 degrees. Now, one thing to always check on your calculator is to make sure your calculator is in the right mode. So if you hit your mode key, the third line down, you should be highlighted on degrees. If it's on radian, then move it over, highlight it to degrees. And once you're all set up in degrees, we're just going to go cos 6 is equal to 0.9945. We'll use 4 decimal places here. So we'll go back to our equation. Cos of 6 is the same thing as 0.9945, which is equal to something divided by 15. And then when we cross multiply, we're going to get x equals 14.92. Let's look at this next problem. A plane flying in an altitude of 30,000 feet, so that means the plane is 30,000 feet in the air, is beginning its descent to the airport at a 5-degree angle. How many ground miles is the plane from the airport? So if the airport is over here, we're trying to figure out this distance, the ground distance the plane is from the airport, and he is beginning his descent at a 5-degree angle, which means that this angle right here, if he's flying straight ahead and he's going to descend at a 5-degree angle, the 5 degrees is right here, which according to alternate interior angles, this angle down here would also be 5 degrees. Or you could also say that this top angle is a 90-degree angle, so this angle would have to be 85. Whichever way you want to do it is fine. So let's look at the sides that we have labeled here. I'm going to go from the 5-degree angle. This is my angle that I'm going to use. The 30,000 is across the triangle from the 5 degrees, so 30,000 would be our opposite side. And the x is right next to the 5-degree angle, so this is our adjacent side. So now we ask ourselves, which trig function involves the opposite and the adjacent? That would be tangent, opposite over adjacent. So we're going to use the tan ratio, so I'm going to set up tangent of 5 degrees is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And now we'll go and get our calculator and evaluate tan of 5, which is 0.0875. And then I'll put this over 1, and we can cross multiply and get 0.0875x is equal to 30,000. So that means that x is equal to 342,902. Now the units on that would be feet. However, the problem asks us for how many ground miles this is, so we need to know that there's 5,280 feet in a mile. So if I take that number of feet and divide it by 5,280, that will give me the number of miles the plane is from the airport, about 65 miles. Our last problem here, we've got a 12-foot tall fire truck. So this is 12 feet. With a 100-foot ladder extended at a 40-degree angle. Will reach how high above the ground? Now notice here, this 12 feet, we've already measured that from the ground to the top of the fire truck. So we're going to need to add on that 12 feet at the end of our problem, because this is the triangle we're going to be working with. And in this triangle, the 100 is the hypotenuse. And then the other side we're looking for, the x, is across from the 40 degrees, so this would be opposite. And the trig function that involves opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we're going to do sine of 40 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Then we'll use our calculator to evaluate sine 40, which is 0.6428. And cross multiplying here gives us 64.28 feet. And remember, this 64.28 is just inside of this triangle from here to here, and we still need to add on that height of the fire truck to give us how high above the ground the ladder reaches, which would be 76.28 feet.